Welcome to Using Excel, Intermediate Spreadsheets, Part 2. You'll recall from our earlier presentation that we had a formula in this cell here which takes the value from column A and then multiplies it by B. We actually had them addressed as D and E previously, but that's irrelevant here. I'm just going to show you that formula again. And we were using the dollar symbol so that when we copied down through other cells and rows, we were always still multiplying by the value stored in B1. Okay, because the dollar symbols make this an absolute cell reference. It always looks at the one cell to gain its values. Now there is an alternative way of doing this same thing. I'm just going to switch back to values here rather than showing formula, and I'm going to delete most of those other cells. So I've just got the one formula now with that absolute reference in it. The name box up here on the top left of your spreadsheet, while you have a cell selected, in this case B2 appears in the name box. If I click into the name box, B2 is highlighted and I can overwrite it. So I can now name the cell that I'm getting the value from. I don't actually want this one. We're going to change where we're getting our percentage from. Currently it's B1. Click in the name box and I'm just going to call this value. Now press return or enter on the keyboard and it's named the cell. You see here I've got C1, B2, A4 and value. Okay, so I've actually named the cell. So now in my formula, if I were to edit, F2 to edit the formula, I can now replace our absolute reference of $B$1 with the named value. So once I start typing it, Excel has given me a little handheld here, and it's actually showing me there are various functions that Excel has. Some of them are actually called value. But this luggage label indicates a named cell. And if I double click, the full name of value is inserted for me, and I can close the brackets and press return or enter on your keyboard. And as you can see, Excel is accepting it quite happily, and if I copy down through with the fill handle, value is the name it's using throughout that formula, and you'll notice that it's the cell B1 that it's always referring to when it's calling value. Okay, you'll see that by the highlighting. So the results are exactly the same. It's still multiplying the value in our first column by 5%, giving us our answer, but in this case it is naming the cell. So this is particularly useful for things such as values you might call frequently a formula. We could have discount, salary, VAT, hourly rate. Any values that you use frequently in formula you can place into cells, name the cell, and then call that name in your formulas so that it becomes clear to everyone what you're trying to do in your formula as well. It's a very useful tool. One last bit about that rule again. Okay, let's just have a value in here, doesn't matter which one. When you're naming the cell, select it, click into the name box, give it your name, let's just use VAT, and notice that we cannot have any spaces. Okay, that's an error message we just had from Excel there. And you also can't start with a number. And the same error message is coming up. So no spaces, no numbers, just text. In the same way, we're able to create a name for a range. If I left click to select a cell, holding down the left button and drag down, I've now selected a range which would be B2 to B14 in a formula. We would have written it as equals sum B2 until colon B14, close brackets, and that gives us a total of 239.5. Okay, but if we name the range instead, we can change it in the formula. So I'm just going to left click to select that range, and in the name box left click, and I'm going to call it range 1. Press return or enter on your keyboard. Now in the cell beneath, I'm going to recreate that same formula, equal the sum of, and I'll start typing range as a name, and Excel is gradually reducing its list of offerings there until it's now offering me range 1 with the luggage label. I can just double click or continue typing to complete that range name, close the bracket, and that's it. It's going to sum all the values in that range. We have the same answer, 239.5. So that's regardless of whether we've used a range as an address, B2 until B14, or the values we've named as being the contents of range 1. Ranges and named cells are always absolute. So regardless of where I'm performing that formula, I can do it on another cell or another worksheet, and it's always going to refer to those same sets of cells because names are absolute. Here's a fictitious data set that I've created showing up some business expenses over a period of weeks. And as you can see, in order to find what I'm after, my totals say, I've got to scroll down the page. Maybe I need to go right a bit, and now I can't really find out, I can't see instantly what this value refers to. I've got £59,000 of something, but I don't know what of. So you'll have to scroll back up to the top. Oh yes, it was the rent. Let's scroll back down and see what the rent was again. Yes, £59,000 something. So this is quite inconvenient for anyone. So one way around having this sort of thing happen, and you want to see more clearly everything on the screen, your labels particularly, is to use a freeze frame. A freeze pane. It's labeled on here on Excel. What I want you to think about is top left. If I just click in this cell for a moment, and you think about that top left corner, okay, because Excel works on top left, and this is where it's going to put the frame for its freeze pane. So if I select my first cell, that top left corner is the top where I'm going to stop so I could keep my expenses labels, and on the left hand side is where I have the labels for days of the week that these values refer to. So that's the top left I'm referring to. You will see it more clearly once I put the freeze panes on. So we go and click on the View tab of the ribbon, and we're looking for the freeze pane icon, and the first option, freeze panes. Left click. So now a nearly invisible line has just been created. You can just see that top line here on the first row, and if I scroll down for a while, you'll see that line created here on the left of the first column. Now it does mean that when I scroll down, I get to keep all the labels at the top in my first row, so I can see what all of my expenses refer to. And if I were to scroll to the right, then my labels for the left, referring to those days of the week, remain visible for those rents as well. So freeze panes has allowed me to keep my labels on the screen whether I'm scrolling right or left across my page. And when you've had enough of that sort of view, go back into the View tab of the ribbon, find the Freeze Panes menu, left click, and then we have an Unfreeze Panes option, left click again, and that Freeze Panes tool has now switched itself off. So there we go, an easy tool to keep your labels on screen. View, freeze panes, freeze panes. to prevent accidental changes to pieces of your workbook, you can protect the worksheet against editing. On the Review tab of the ribbon, locate and left-click Protect Sheet. It's going to password protect locked cells. By default, all your cells will be locked unless you've unlocked them previously. So just type in a password. I'm using a simple one, and then repeat it. Press OK. And now, when you try and delete anything, you get the message. The cell is on a protected sheet. Basically prevents anyone from making accidental errors, or if your cat walks across your keyboard, or something similar. So when you actually want to make these changes again, go back to the Review tab of the ribbon, unprotect the sheet, and repeat the password that you put in earlier. It's probably best if you don't forget that. So once again, I'm able to delete or alter parts of my worksheet that would otherwise have been locked to me. For better security of your worksheet, especially if you're saving confidential or financially important data, do the following. On the File menu, look for Protect Workbook and left click. Look for the option Encrypt with Password. Left click. Type a password. Now the recommendation is 10 characters. Okay, I'm only using 4 to keep things simple for this exercise, but it's recommended you use a 10 character password. I'm going to press OK, and I'm asked to repeat it, just to check that you're spelling it exactly the same both times. Press OK. You'll now notice this has become yellow. This is a protected workbook. So when I save, and then close this page, that page can't be opened again except with a password. So I'll just demonstrate that. I'll go back into Excel, open the sample. Excel now requires that password to be repeated or this document can't be opened. So make sure that you remember your 10 character password, otherwise you will not see this work again. So I'll just press OK. And now I've got access to my work again. And I can make all my usual edits. If you decide you no longer wish to keep this document password protected, go back into File, Protect Workbook, which you can see is currently yellow and highlighted. Left click. There is our encryption marked. Left click. And there's our password. Simply delete it. Now remember, it took you the password to get in here to be able to do this, so it assumes you're the owner. So don't share the password around or leave your document open on a desktop, or somebody can simply delete the password for you while you're not looking. So I'm just going to press OK and save, and this is now an unprotected document once again. When you start an Excel worksheet, it'll come with 3 pages, 3 worksheets by default. So they're numbered 1, 2 and 3. And left clicking on the tabs will change between your various worksheets. Here's one I named earlier. When you need a new worksheet, look for this plus symbol and left click. So this has created sheet 5. I've previously deleted a sheet 4. And sheet 5 isn't a very useful name. I'm all ready to start my work in Excel, but this is not a useful name for my worksheet. I'm going to right click and rename, and it's now highlighted the text there, and I can replace it with a more useful label. Also, if you wish to use these pages and all its data again, maybe you want to keep the labels and just change all the values you've got stored in there, you can right click on the tab and choose Move or Copy. So within this move or copy menu, whichever sheet you've currently got highlighted, it will place the copy before that sheet. So if I press a check in the checkbox for create a copy, press OK, left click OK, there is my copy of Pains. There's my original Pains worksheet, and here's Pains 2. So I'm ready to just delete all that data and I'm clear, ready to start new work. However, Pains 2 isn't a very useful name either. I could be easily confused with Pains. So I'm going to right click and choose rename, and it's highlighted, ready to be overwritten. So we might call this, let's just give it a month name, July Pains, and press return or enter on the keyboard to confirm. When you're working with multiple worksheets, such as here, you may wish to pull your data together into a summary, and I've created a summary worksheet here at the end. I'm going to gather values from the June Pains total and also from the July Pains total and summarize them on this summary worksheet. So the June Pains total is over here on H98. However, if I make a cell reference to H98 in my summary worksheet, I'm getting a 0 result because that cell down here somewhere on this worksheet has no value stored on it. I need to get Excel to look at the other worksheet first. We do this in the following manner. Select the cell you want your result to appear, press the equal symbol. We're going to make this cell equal to whatever comes next. In this case, with the mouse, here's my cursor, I'm going to left click on June, on the worksheet name, whatever you called yours. Here is the cell that I want to gather the value from. Left click. So marching ants tell me Excel has its focus on this cell in that worksheet. And if you look in the formula bar at the top here, there is June Pains with exclamation inverted commas just to donate the text, and an exclamation point denoting that it is a worksheet name, and then the cell reference H98. Now, as long as I've got the marching ants, Excel has its focus there, I'll press enter or return on the keyboard, and I get the value stored in that cell. Now I have too many decimal places, I'm just going to pull those out. And if I wish to, I could make this currency as it is on the other cell. Okay, so now I need to do the same for July. Select the cell where you wish to have your result appear. Press the equal symbol with your mouse cursor. Left click and select the other worksheet name. And that will open. Then your second click will select the cell you're gathering the result from. Notice again my reference now says July Pains with an exclamation mark denoting the name of the worksheet, and then the cell reference H98. Marching ants showing me Excel has the focus on this cell. Press return or enter on your keyboard, and once more I will change that to currency and then remove my excess decimal places. Now, as well as having those values here, I could just total them in this cell. I'm going to show you how we can create a total formula using these external references. So again, with that cell highlighted, selected, make it equal to, I'm going to have the sum of, open brackets, and then select the worksheet name. And I'm going to left click to select the cell. So in my cell formula bar up here, you can now see I'm saying make this cell equal to the sum of June Pains H98 plus, click on July Pains and select the cell reference. There's the marching ants, and have a look at the formula bar, and I'm saying make this equal to the sum of June Pains H98 plus July Pains, exclamation mark denoting the page name, H98. Press return or enter on your keyboard. Excel has helpfully inserted the final bracket for me. You'll notice it here in the formula bar. And once more, I can add the currency and remove the extra decimal places if I wish to. So I've gathered both of these data from other pages, and in the formula I've also gathered that same data a second time to create a formula that refers to other cells in other pages.